Welcome to Backstage 421, the musicians only podcast, with your host, author, and music lover, Charles Campbell. Charles will have an awesome array of guests from many genres of music, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. By the way, Ray Mattis is the composer of this awesome intro music.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Backstage 421, the Musicians Only podcast. I'm your host, small town horror author Charles Campbell, and today I have a very special guest. He is a friend of the show. He was on our podcast last year on the Horror 421 podcast, and he's an amazing musician, an amazing dude. Welcome to the show, Lyrizone.
How's it going, man?
How you doing today? I'm doing great. So with my day job, I had a little Lyrizone playlist going. So and I will tell you right out the gate. That fucking 23 Knives. I've had that on loop for,
Thank you.
Quite a bit. And as people know, I'm lyrically driven. I love lyrics and songs, and I do want to dig into that song particularly for sure.
Go for it. I got a lot of time on it.
But before we do any of that, I want you to share with the audience who you are, give them a little bit about your background and how you came up to where you are today.
Awesome. My name is Lyrizone. I am a new metal artist from Vancouver, Washington. Subgenre of itself is historical new metal, historical fiction new metal. Previously had some involvement for the horrorcore community, hardcore hip hop, and so essentially, in a nutshell, I am pretty much the blue masked guy you'll see on social media that has satire, but also likes to do history pieces, which puts us to the latest song, 23 Knives, to where it was literally based off of Julius Caesar. I love history. I would major in it if it had more time. I could actually do it. But I just, at this point for Lyrizone, without saying too much of what the project is for Segalia, the new LP coming out, it's a time traveling piece because the character time travels, and it's kind of like if you had to find a funny spin on kind of like Deadpool itself, how funny he is, and kind of have there's a little inspiration everywhere. If they haven't seen The Mask, actually, I'll show them real quick. I have like 5 of them.
And that's a great segue into Lyrizone was on our podcast last year, Horror 421, the podcast, and he had the mask on for that. So if you want to see a mask Lyrizone, you can go check out that episode from last year.
Yeah.
But he's done a lot of shit since last year. A lot of shit.
Yeah, right. But so far it's been a lot of cool stuff. We had short films that were released based off the character. We actually have some stuff going forward. I can't say too much just yet. But essentially, it's also my involvement as far as merchandise, and we're going to have a song playing at the credits of the actual film. So I'm looking forward to that. It's the first actual film placement, which is amazing to me. I love it. But yeah, just the whole itself, as far as the character, I approached it more now of very, very storytelling driven, very heavy on lyrics, production. I've always been a fan of rock. That's where I came from. Even though I still had hip hop background, I generally always listened to had AC/DC in the background. Then we had when Ghost was coming out, they had before the theatrics, they were doing more the lyric driven stuff, even more easily Alice Cooper and stuff like that. So I just took a little bit from every part and started essentially make its own product. And that's kind of where I'm at today, is just enjoying everything that's coming around, whether it be new areas I'm visiting. Like we literally just drove my mom to East Coast, and I actually stopped in Nashville and went to the Pantheon. I was like, that is so amazing. So I did research on that, which helped 23 Knives. But just there's so much history in this whole country and the whole world in general that if you want to find inspiration, if you look for it, you'll find it. And that's where the beauty is.
I agree with that 1,000%. Being an author, I have to draw inspiration from a lot of places. And I do have a book coming out called The Piano Witch. And it was inspired by a guest on this podcast. So everyone's heard the story, and I'll share it with you very briefly because I want to make this about you. But when she was a child, she used to take piano lessons with her with her father, and he had an old piano, and in the wood of the piano she could see the image of a witch, and it always scared her. And I said, "Can I use that?" She's like, "Yep," and it's a book now.
That's
So,
awesome.
that was to make your point about inspiration. You find it everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but dude, the shit you got out now, man, it's some cool stuff. And what I like about it, and I've gone through and watched a ton of the videos, is the production value behind the videos. I want to touch on that too. But before we get into any of that, I want to jump
Go
into
for it.
23 Knives. Where did you come up with the concept for that song in particular? It's driving in my brain right now. It's
It's
very
actually
catchy, but it has a story. And
well,
yeah, I'm
there's
going to be
just
quiet and let you speak on it.
so there is so much that came into the song itself as far as inspiration pieces. Um, so anyone who follows Lyrizone on Instagram, Facebook, or wherever, you know I've been pretty much doing a basic tarot card set because I love the idea of tarot cards. I love when it first started, it was actually a game. It then turned more spiritual as time went on. People actually found more emotional attachment to it, and then it started becoming its own entity. And I was like taking that on. I'm like, okay, that's so cool. But then I started thinking, okay, I love tarot cards. My fiance has a deck, and she's constantly telling me history about it. And I was like, what if I did one that's like a tarot card set, but it changes throughout time, like just be different decks, and each card changes in a certain time period. And I was like, okay, so we had one for the
Right.
magician, which is off of Air. And I was like, okay, so that the whole song Air is based off a magician from the Dark Ages. I was like, so what if we did one that's literally based off of Julius Caesar, but have the Emperor? And have Lyrizone essentially
Hmm.
be the one that was talking and saying little sweet nothings to the senator's ears, causing the uprising. And I was like, that's gonna be so cool because it would have a fiction piece of the character, but it would actually have some real life pieces into it. Which caused me to do more research on Julius Caesar. Like there was a line about him being taken from pirates, and he would not go
Hmm.
back to Rome without actually having the like his ransom being increased because he felt like so glorified and so much better than
Oh
anybody
yeah.
else. To literally, I had to. It's even funny because when you go on Instagram, Joshua Holland of Green Light Studios, my producer and best friend at this point, we literally just make music and find different sounds of making it. So we even found like toward the third verse of open toga and having Lyrizone make his own toga. And it goes from a whole period of me befriending Julius Caesar at a young age, we both growing together, me realizing the talent this guy has, but knows he's squandering it because he's not seizing the moment. And then my character just, and it also goes into, which you're going to love this one, the 48 Laws of Power. I actually did at least 15 rules from that book just in the song itself, where it goes to
God,
keep your
jeez.
friends close. Like I utilized,
Yeah.
there is so
Yeah.
many things inside the song. When you find it, it's like, they pulled it from there. Yep. Especially for the last part, for the third verse, where Lyrica makes his grand entrance. Make a grand entrance for your bigger rival. It's there's so
Yeah.
much stuff inside that song, little Easter eggs. That I feel like if you read the books and you do your history on it, you're going to cherish it so much more at face value because you're like, oh crap, we spent months easily just figuring out the storyline for this second verse, and especially
Yeah.
going back and forth. And
No,
it also,
you can
yeah,
tell, man. The quality
I
of the
love it.
lyrics are, and I'm gonna let you keep talking because I want you to talk about it
Go
more.
for it.
But I'm just saying the quality of the lyrics, and it kind of reeled me in, and I really listened to them very carefully after about the third or fourth listen. I've listened to it a lot over the last few days because I like all of your stuff, but that one really sticks out to me. So,
I appreciate it.
and
Yeah, because
well, in the flow too, the flow that you have with your words, um, I mean, it's superior. It's great, and
I
if it
appreciate
weren't,
that.
I'd just be quiet and not say anything. But no, it's really good. So you guys go out there, check out 23 Knives. You can find it on
Thank
YouTube.
you,
We got a
sir.
cool ass video to go with it.
Oh
But
yeah.
I digress. Keep on talking.
But yeah, there was so much jammed into the song itself. Like the artwork, we had three different pieces. I had a shirt design, which I should be probably wearing today, but that's just bad marketing on my end. uh, we had a YouTube graphic where I had Yudo from 5 Milligrams. He's my graphic artist for he does graphics for everything for Lyrizone mostly these days. And I had an artwork done that was originally be a painting because mostly it's Renaissance theme and oil based, and I wanted to have the frame being the actual song's transition to the actual like forefront of the image. Um, there's just so much detail I want to put in songs going forward. And the next one will actually lean toward the after effect of this and me meeting Cleopatra. So that's gonna be a
Oh,
complete
cool.
other thing to where, and there's also some history pieces as far as like her and Julius Caesar, them having an affair at one point, and then she's pretty much like there's a lot of history already as it is. It was pretty much supposed idea of them both getting together, and she was trying to become because she was mostly the last main ruler of Egypt. And I think as far as that went, she was also trying to find um, a way to get more power across the world. And so I was trying to find a way to like also do some history on that one. So that's gonna be a whole another subject because I had to do more history on her, which is gonna also go into buying and getting our tarot card design, which we're still going on. Like if it's gonna be the lovers of Lyrizone being acquainted with her and they fall in love, or it's gonna be just the queen. Like there's so much storyline with this one. It's gonna be so fun. But back to 23 Knives, that one in itself, the inspiration was mostly just because I love Roman mythology. And I actually found a way in a lot of the artwork to link it back to Greece as well, because that's where Rome mostly got their a lot of their
Oh,
ideology
yeah.
from. And I was like, I love that. Even if you look on the shirt design for 23 Knives, you see a layer, which is more of like the god that protects the land. You'll see that in the far back. If you didn't look for it, you wouldn't see it. So
I
it
got you.
just so much cool stuff. Um, and it also goes back to Joshua Holland, my producer. Like he loves the music scene as far as like when I first came to him as far as horrorcore, even though we still did like a very niche genre, we found a way to make movies out of it, which you heard a lot of the stuff previously were the cinematics.
Oh, yeah.
And so we spent easily hours on hours just figuring out like certain time and like certain pieces. Um, so without someone like me, I'm a very visual person. Like even though I'm very auditory, obviously, he's also the second piece of the puzzle that helps me figure out how to make it work. Like I give him the vision of how I want it visually, and he finds a way to interpret it in audio form. And that's where we also like we built the song with a lot of different actual like pieces. In the very beginning, like right now, it's being symbolized as harpcore because it's the pretty much rare to find a rapper rapping over a harp. And and I was going to find different instruments, and I was like, okay, so if we're gonna do something off this song, we gotta do it right. It's gotta be symbolic. It's gotta be really, really like tight to where it sounds like it needs to be from the time period. So we started looking at, hey, so what instrument did they use at this time? Um, and they actually used time, so we actually had to put that in the graphic as well because time was a very, very good and essential like remedy for everything. But I digress. We were going to find everything for that time span, and we were finding glass flutes, we were finding harps, we were finding like anything you could find.
Yeah.
We put it instrumentation. I was like, okay, this is gonna be freaking epic because now as we're going from song to song, we find timepieces and we find the instruments that are done there and put those in the song. So not only does a good reflection does the song justice, it also does the culture and the time. And for what our piece we're speaking on, it does it even more because it gives us, hey, this is a homage piece of what we did our time on it, and we're not just
Right.
throwing a song together and saying, hey, this is gonna be good enough. So research is
No,
everything, man.
yeah, no, you didn't throw a song together. There's a lot going on in 23 Knives. So
Oh
much
yeah,
so, like I said, I've listened to it repeatedly,
it takes a
and
while.
because oh yeah, yeah, but I'm lyrically driven, and I've told everyone who's been on this podcast who writes songs that I admire what they do because to produce a well written song that's driven by lyrics and not just a hook. Hooks are fine, but I like stories and I like you conveying something
Same.
to me. And that song it hit punched all the right buttons for me anyway. But
Thank
anyway,
you. Yeah, I always
like you
tell
said, I
folks the
digress.
hook is very infectious, but that's the one thing I always want to have as a good hook because it keeps the hooked people
Right,
hooked, literally. But I pride myself on the verses because I feel that's where my area I can actually tell my stories and actually verbally get my work out. Where the
right,
hooks, it's good to be catching someone's head and they get locked in the head with the
yeah,
melody and they're good to go. But once they
yeah,
learn the verses, that's when you sell them on the story, and that's it.
exactly. And don't get me wrong, songs need hooks,
Oh
but
yeah,
they all good songs also need good lyrics. It depends on the
exactly.
environment you're in and what you're wanting to listen to. Now, if you want to go jump around and have fun at an EDM party, that's one thing. Yeah, I'm all for that too.
Oh
But
yeah,
if you want to
music's
sit down
music,
and
man.
listen to something, yeah, music is music. But if you want to be moved by something internally, you got to have lyrics to do that. You know.
I agree.
But yeah, yeah. Oh
But yeah,
man, so I want to ask you about the production of this stuff. So I've seen quite a few of your videos now, and without giving away any trade secrets on your process or anything like that, but tell me what goes into putting those videos together because they're pretty damn impressive.
Um, I have like 15 boards, drivers to boards, so I can break them down by one for you. But essentially, for each one, I've had a certain process for the last couple of years of how to actually do this correctly and I guess take the visual game to the next level. To where if it is doing artwork, it's like a 2D image. I have artists I've reached out throughout the years, which is the one who did the last video and for air, which is going to be my next guy going forward for everything. Um, he does more of the 3D animation type stuff to where it keeps the visual like things going. I also have for the next release, I'm actually doing. I pretty much got in talks right now with a guy who's doing 3D visual arts. He just motion does motion covers and animations, and he does more. It's more like cycled, and that piece. That's when people are talking about NFTs and stuff like that. I was like, no, I'm just gonna go ahead and just have it like I was in talking to Josh, and for Lincoln Park, they had Lincoln Park Underground, which was pretty much like the Patreon, the early Patreon. And I was like, okay, so what if I offered that on Lyrizone.com going forward to where not only it's kind of like Discord on crack, so you would have everything you would need as far as backstory and more, and you have a community off of the social media stuff that makes it to where I can still have stuff there, but this will be the home to where you can find anything you need. Um, but that just goes to changing with time, having adversity and knowing that hey, so this is how things are not working now. You got to change things up. Before I would just do a video and say be fine, do a lyric video. But now since I know the quality is getting more up there, I need to actually also put more into time, which is having the 3D animator have like the still images moving a little bit, make it seem like they're actually functioning and the characters are actually moving. Um, I even had him when he was doing the choruses to have the lines cut, and he was like, "Well, that looks a little." I was like, "I want to make it seem like the characters below Lyrizone are having their own actual like interpretation of them cutting free and breaking away from his grasp." And it's like every person who
Okay.
watches it could be a different interpretation of it. They're gonna look at it, oh, that's a little odd, or oh, that's pretty cool. Like it's gonna be.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of like. I love dabbling into leaving things for interpretation and leave it open so that way you could have more of a wholesome experience of what you feel it means. And if you don't know what it is, you just keep on reading and keep on learning it. Um, but yeah, so far my approach on all this has just been take it one day at a time, learning from peers that do very well, um, watching my producer who does a great job with what he's doing, making sure my skills are up to par with him and vice versa, and just keeping things like locked in and making sure my audience that are automatically diehard fans from Lyrizone from the early ages and they're already appreciating the work now, like make sure I appreciate them. Do the little bit that makes them feel valued, get the street team going. I even have one on Facebook where they come through and every month we get together and talk about like cool things for the history and also for Lyrizone going forward. Um, I guess the gist, as far as the whole process itself, is just taking it one day at a time and just enjoying the process because it's not an
Yeah.
overnight success thing ever.
I mean, you've been working hard at it, and as a small town horror author, I know how hard it is to promote and get your stuff out there, and uh, you
It's
know,
all about networking,
get
dude. Since we talked
get
about
get
that
no
first on one.
get get noticed. Um,
Yeah.
so you know, you touched base on this on the last podcast, but this is a completely different podcast. This is a musicians only podcast. So
Let's go
I'm
for it.
gonna kind of ask the same question again that I
Go
asked
for it.
before. Um, so who were some of your earlier influences coming up as a musician? Who were the folks that you gravitated toward and gave you the bug to do what you're doing now?
Well, Iron Maiden. We'll go definitely back to Alice Cooper. Corn. Always love ACDC, especially live shows.
Yeah,
Shinedown's one of my favorite ones. And we could always go from like even from different genres itself to where like Frank Sinatra as far as the wholesomeness and also just like being true to who you naturally are, like just dealing with it and just rocking and rolling. Then we can go from pop music. It's most of my influence itself is as I got older, I realized that we're all interconnected in some sort of way. Like especially for everyone said, "Oh, they're so talented." Like no, it's just practice. Like they practice every single day. That what keeps an amazing actor, an amazing writer. Uh, it's just practice. Like if there is no such thing as just oh, it's just natural talent. It's like yeah, there might be a little bit, but I promise you, they have to work every single day. Like Ariana Grande's working every single day to make sure her vocals
yeah,
are good. Um, so mostly for that point is just going from yeah, just enjoying what you're doing. But yeah, most of my stuff has been that way. So sorry, went on a
Okay.
tangent. Sorry.
Well, no, you're good. That's what makes you a good podcast guest because I get to listen and you get to talk.
Right.
But another question I have that I've asked all the musicians that have been on this podcast so far, and you can answer both of them, or you can only answer one. I'll let you decide.
I'll
But
probably do
living or
both.
dead, yeah, okay. Well, living or dead, who's an artist or artists that you would love to or would have loved to have collaborated with?
Mm, Bobby Caldwell, definitely. I I actually, it's really sucks that he passed away recently. I was like, man, like vocally between that, um, D Martin, another favorite of mine. Um, Amy
Did you
Lee,
say Dean Martin?
D Martin,
Did you
yeah,
say Dean? Oh
D Martin,
wow, there you
yeah.
go.
Like I said,
Nice.
my brain is everywhere lately for as far as musicians.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
uh
Oh, I'm with you
uh
with Amy Lee, buddy. Yeah.
like there's so many artists, both alive and past, that are amazing. Um, Jonathan Davis I always wanted to work with because I just, like I said, Korn's a huge influence on me, especially when I was
Right.
younger. Writing style, um, even if it was Fred Durst, like like
Yeah.
that's the whole like nostalgia itself. But they still work. But yeah, as far as like the lead vocalist, Amy Lee, definitely I would love to do work with her. Um, that would have been an amazing process. I feel like Frank Sinatra would have been a little bit different. It probably would have not worked with the horrorcore Lyrizone, but it might have worked a little more this one. But who knows? Music can make it work. Frankie can make it work. Rat Pack for life. But yeah, so that's kind of where my favorites have been at. I've mostly been just dwelling more into like artists that are just you haven't really seen much live shows with, and you have to really search for them. Um, because especially like a lot of artists back earlier, you had to actually pay for the shows or they kept it to themselves to where the process was a little hidden. And I feel like that's a good thing that's hasn't happened yet because everyone's just showing what they do every single day, which is what I love doing. But I also love the mystique that came with the process at our early time, to where you didn't really see all this stuff. You had like the forefront image and you were good to go. Excuse me. But I
Right.
feel like it's also kind of a caveat because right now you're seeing a lot of your artists of what makes them them, and that makes it more genuine, which is a good thing too as well. But I don't know. I guess I'm old fashioned like that as well, to where I kind of like I don't really want to post today about what's going on in my life. I just want to go ahead and let you see the music coming on like 2 weeks later. I don't want to show you all this stuff. but
There you go.
but it also goes to the artist and how you're. And I can comfortably say for the last couple of years, I've actually broke that wall down to where I'm more comfortable of who exactly I'm working with and people I socialize with, because when you start like just become more natural and just saying, hey, this is fuck it, I'll just have fun with what I'm doing, and I'll just be, if they like it, they like it. They don't, they don't. Everything's fine.
There
Then
you
you start
go.
actually
Yeah.
just enjoying yourself most, because when you start like trying to like please the mirror per se, then things really start getting like foggy, because then you're not truly trying to focus on what's important. You're focusing on like the third wall or whatever, or like you're focusing on more on the aspect of something looking at you in reflection instead of just letting it work itself out, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And that's a great way to look at it. You are who you are and you do what you do, and people can like it or they can not like it. They have a choice. So I'm
Absolutely.
with you 1,000% on that one. Like, in the past when I've had a book release or whatever, and I won't bring up relatives' names, but they'll read the book and they'll come back and they won't say it to me directly. They'll go to my wife and, why does he have to curse so much in his books? And my answer is always the same. I'm not cursing in the books. That's the character cursing in the book. That's who they are.
Right. That's how it
So
is, though. I would rather have that's funny, because I would rather have someone who swears and it shows a little more honesty than someone who just bites their tongue and like snakes around the backside and
r-
says, "I don't like that." But
exactly,
no, usually I don't know. Maybe it's the norther in me, for the Jersey person in me saying that. It's like, you need to start cursing a little more. Let you feel and show.
exactly. Well, man, you got a lot of stuff going on. I want to know what your aspirations are going forward. What is the big picture for Lyrizone? What do you see yourself?
Ah,
Where do you see yourself? Oh, this is like a job interview. Where do you see yourself in a
mm,
year? I mean,
I'll take it.
what do you see?
Give me the
What do
five
you
year
have coming down
plan.
the
Damn.
pipeline? Yeah, the
Give me a
5-year plan. That's
401k for
right.
this one too, huh? There ain't no 401k unless I'm really invested.
That's right. That's
um,
right.
but I would say going forward, my main goal is to keep doing what I'm doing, but do it at a volume to where Lyrizone's known for more of than just being the hip hop artist. Like for next one, we actually did a lot more vocal work as far as me just actually singing. Because I feel like I'm slowly on the precipice of breaking the wall of just being the rapper who sings sometimes to being someone who actually does more anthemic and like more like learn about falsettos, learn about the head voice, chest voice,
Right.
doing more singing courses to figure out how the singers do it, but then find a way to bridge that gap. Um, but I just want to be like someone you look at like Lyrizone itself, you're like, I wonder what type of history is going on today. I wonder what I'm going to learn today. Like, because essentially in the jest, when I go and everything's said and done and I pass on, I want whatever my music to stay behind to be a reflection of someone who did their time, did their effort, and staying on top of their research, took their craft and put a lot of time into it, became completely wholesome with it, realized that it was more than just themselves. Like, even though I'm writing this as Joseph Marino or Lyrizone, this is not just me. This is someone who I spent years networking, find different people, have them unlock a certain thing when I was talking to them about like, hey, so about this rune, like this one design. Then they talked to their family about it. They grew closer to that person by talking to them more. Like my goal as far as aspirations going forward is just to make a really, really good product that only not only benefits me, but everyone around me and makes the world a better place.
That's a great response. A question that keeps digging in my brain, and if you're not quite ready for this yet, just tell
I'll
me.
take it.
But are do you have any plans? And if you've already done this, say, "Hey, man, you've been out of the loop." But do you have any plans on getting on a stage somewhere, performing in front of a crowd?
Yes. See, the funny thing was, is the last catalog I did so far for Lyrizone itself, technically the rebranding didn't start until Why Can't I? That was more of the rock base, but that was also based off a short film. So even though um, in itself it was a good product, I feel like any songs before that would be good, but also it wouldn't reflect well on what I am currently.
What you're doing now? All
So
right, I got you.
yes, I feel like I want to get my song catalog more because I still have songs for the between features, solos. I had that on the back catalog, but I feel like that wouldn't reflect more if I like for Air and 23 Nights. I think that's the first two solid standing songs. I want to have at least five because usually set lists are like 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and there's also going to be some time for me doing crowd engagement and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it
But it
depends on if
also,
you're opening or
you're
opening or
right,
headlining. If you're
you're
opening,
right.
you got half an hour.
Yeah. It's actually funny you asked that. So there is a staff that Lyrizone is holding in 23 Nuts, which you've probably seen it in the YouTube video. It's the Children's Segalia logo, which is
Oh yeah.
also the short film brand, but it's also the fans of Lyrizone or followers, should say. Which goes some timepieces, which is gonna be a whole. We'll go through the whole mythology later on because we go a whole. It's gonna be longer than an hour, but essentially the staff is going to be a stage prop I'm going to be using on photography and for live shows. And I'm going to pretty much have to where the bottom one, I'm going to have a way to hook the actual microphone on it to flip it upside down. Kind of like
Oh,
what
dude, that'd be
King
cool.
Diamond did for a good bit. Because that's
Oh
another
yeah.
it's the inspiration is King Diamond. Um, but that's kind of like I want to have a custom staff done. It's gonna have a stage prop whenever I'm like doing photo shoots is right there. And it's gonna be kind of like the symbol of a never-ending time loop. And so that's another thing is that for the live show is I don't want to just be someone on stage and just say my piece and get off. I want to have an actual like huge freaking presence. Which goes to, hey, am I gonna do a fog machine? How's it gonna cost? Hey, so what's we do with the as far as
Yeah.
merch table? How am I gonna make that work? Um, it's gonna be I just want to put a lot more time into it to where the fans and people who there it they can have a lot of things going on outside the life, but when they come to the show, they can just step out of their head a little bit and they can just relax, enjoy the experience, and take them there with me. They can probably like they'll see me change character and see the voice change, and it'll just be a big circus act in a way. So, but it keeps them
No,
happy.
no, no. Yeah, no, I respect that because you want to make sure that you're putting on the show that's worthy. Uh, for you to put on. And I agree with that. You don't want to get up there and put something together, even though you could.
Yeah.
You
Because
shouldn't. Yeah.
because I would love to, but I think the only issue with me doing that approach, as far as just jumping to the live show game, is that I put so much time in the visual image that if I don't do that and follow up correctly with the right
Yeah.
ensemble,
If
the
you
right
don't, yeah.
attire,
If you don't
yeah,
deliver, yeah,
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 we just walk
you're in
out with a
trouble.
Lyrizone mask. They'd be like,
Like,
but yeah, it's just me.
oh man. Well, like last year, you talked about how some of your things were horror centric, and I
Yeah.
love the vibe that you're going with right now, with
Well, I still have
especially
horror.
with
I still love
23.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to segue into that. Talk about that a little bit. Some of the folks that are watching this podcast didn't see last year's, so I want you to touch on that a little more too. Your background in horror and
Gotcha.
what you've got from that game.
Oh man, so that goes all the way far back to like having my first set of fans be juggalos. That then started showing me different acts and different showing me like different artists they like. Um, learn about LSP, then learn about Twisted and ICP, and then go straight down the rabbit hole to the Flatliners, and then just finding everything that I could under underground horror and just find a horrorcore culture in itself. Then falling to like, hey, so what kind of artists are on Strange Music? Because then I grew up as a huge Tech Nine fan. Then I found Brett Chung. Then it just went a complete like circle of finding the right influences, what made them tick as far as like their producers, following their producers. Um, to where even right now, as we're speaking, I just found one of the main producers who did Michael Jackson's Thriller album, and I was like, "That is."
Get
He's
out of
like
here!
showing
Really
down the
nice.
yeah. He's breaking down the synths and like how he did the certain like 808s a certain way, and I'm like, dude, like stuff like that. I just love because as I got older, as I'm becoming more like trying to figure out how this works, it makes it so much easier. Before it was like I still had love for it, but I wasn't as in deep with it as I am now. To where I feel like it's kind of funny because even when I was a horrorcore artist, I don't think I delved that far into horror than I do now, which is hilarious because I think, okay, you were that was your job and profession, you were not doing it justice because you're doing a lot more now than before. Um, so it's just as far as horror itself, influences. I definitely had a lot from my old label I was with. Um, then we had me work with Josh, and then he loves doing soundscape as far as finding different films. He's a big horror film fan too, as well. Speaking of, we actually just got done. We were actually upstairs watching Barbarians, so that was pretty interesting. But there was just so much cool films. Me myself, like I said, Hellraiser. I know everyone's always crapping on me for saying, "Oh, it's a slow burner." I know, but I love it. I don't care. Like Clive Barker would know what he was doing. He knew. Okay, you go
Yeah,
into it
yeah.
knowing it's a slow creeper. Which of I think we didn't talk about the new Hellraiser, did we? I never think we discussed that one.
I don't think so. I don't think we did. No.
But we'll leave that
No, we
for
did. Yeah, well, no, we can talk. We can talk
for
about it. I've seen it. I've seen it. I didn't hate it. I don't know if I loved it, but I didn't hate it. What was your take?
I think it was good. But I think there was definitely a lot of changes made, which I think were good.
Yeah,
But in the twist of watching like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one, where we all were unanimous of saying, "What was this?" I definitely enjoyed Hellraiser more because I felt like Cinebites designed 100% better. Like I love the
oh
look of
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Terrifying as it will, especially leaving the limits as far as the actual boxes and them changing to a certain way. I was like, I love it. Um, lighting
yeah,
wise was
yeah.
okay.
That was cool.
I the lighting. Like I told you before, I'm a huge like fan of like color grading. So if I see any reflections that throw me off, I'm like, that brought me out. I need to go
Yeah,
back in. um, but it's the little things. So um, but yeah, horror in itself, I will always enjoy, like especially now watching movies. Uh, I usually actually follow a podcast called Last Podcast on the Left. I love watching and kind of like they have their last stream on the left on YouTube, but I mean it's diving the dark side, but also has a good little like comedy relief with it because when you dive too far into horror, which in itself its own twist is that horror is a very therapeutic type art, but also if
Right.
you are viewing it in the wrong form, it can be very malicious to you because it brings acceptance in its way, but it's also kind of like, okay, so if you get too far down a rabbit hole, you're not able to actually appreciate the art itself, appreciate certain things. You're only just stuck at first value because you're putting yourself onto it and you're just being stuck in it. Which I think you understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh yeah. Yeah. Completely.
so that's kind of where that's where the horror has been for me, is just enjoying the process of it, like doing a lot more research as far as learning different producers, their styles, learn more about film, because that's one thing I always want to do more of, is just learn how this sound happens, if it's just crunching leaves or breaking a stick and making
Right.
a bone snap, like stuff like that. So
Yeah, well, that's cool, man. I had Ray Mattis on a few weeks ago. He's a music composer, and he's done soundtracks for um, quite a few movies. Actually, now they're most of them are low budget horror, but he's done a couple of westerns, and I loved his take on um, putting that stuff together. So, you talk about networking. That's like another cool cat you can reach out to if you ever have any questions about putting something together, maybe for a movie soundtrack or you know. Background noise and
absolutely,
that kind of stuff. He's a cool dude, and he told a couple funny ass stories too. So if you haven't seen those podcasts, go back and listen to those. Those were
definitely will.
hilarious. But yeah, I watch a lot of horror, obviously, but I also watch a lot of indie horror, and I love to see the art in its purest form. These guys that are working hard for little money and putting their own graphics together and making their own, special effects, practical effects, no special CGI. That kind of
I
stuff
agree.
impresses me, what they can do with what limited resources they have. So, don't get me wrong, I do like the big budget blockbusters too every once in a while. Now, I'm a big Evil Dead nut, and I love the Evil Dead Rise. I've seen it a few
Mhm.
times. I love that movie. But yeah, I love the creativity of artists in general, and you're
Well, it
definitely
shows
one
their
of those.
hungriness too, and their way to, like, if they don't have a big budget, how to make it happen. Like, most of
Right.
my stuff when I was doing films and short films is learning, how can I make this happen? We're getting like old school, which I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching this, if they've done horror props, they'd probably think, oh, this is pretty interesting. But we did like nylon stockings and stuff with like paper mache, some dirt. And we got some like dead worms from Petco, and then we like stuffed them inside of each other. And then we were doing like the gusting, taking a knife and cutting it. It looked like the mesh was like just bloody and nasty and moldy, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that prop was took
Nice.
like 7 bucks around there. So it was like, it's
Yeah.
just improvising, making it work.
Yep. Yep. And that's great. I love that kind of stuff, man. Love that kind of stuff. So with 23 Knives, well, not only with just 23 Knives, in any of the songs that you've written and produced, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced to get something to look exactly how you wanted it? I have 23
Mm.
Knives in mind because it looks so good, and it's almost, in my brain, it is perfect. It's a perfect video and it's a perfect song, and everything complements each other perfectly. But
Vocal
that
technique.
perfection didn't yeah, it didn't come without it didn't come without a cost. So I want to know what some of the challenges were to get something like that, if that makes sense.
A lot of sessions of saying this is fucking garbage. Excuse my language. A lot of saying this is not going well. Maybe we should stop making the song. Josh, like, this is two verses in. We're not stopping the song. We're going. And I'm like, okay, so I have one more verse. What am I gonna do? And then say, hey, so this probably might not help you, but watch Troy and get yourself in the ball game because we're finishing this song. And I'm like, okay. So just go ahead and just deal with it and buck up and just rock and roll and hit it, because a lot of it, believe it or not, is a lot of my work itself. The biggest, I guess, issues is never really the lyrics, because I put a lot of time into them, but it usually comes a little more fluid if I find the right location and also the right environment to write under. But performance is usually my thing, because I am very, very animated when I do my hip hop. Like, especially on the rapping side, like, there'll be videos if you look on TikTok where I'm like constantly moving my hands because I have to get myself into
Right.
character. And
Right.
it's like, even it's like certain things like having excuse me, having the like certain lights a certain way. Like, I have like sporadic, if we're doing sporadic writing or really irritated writing or energized, lights gotta be red at all times. If it's very, very like relaxing conditions. I'm trying to be mild, keep a very, very like very, very soft voice. We have to have blue lights going. Like there's so much psychological crap I have to do to get my brain ready for my session that most folks like, why you gotta do all that? It's just comes with being me. I have to go through hoops to make this work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I could say I jumped through a bunch of hoops when I write a book, but I sit in front of my computer like this and I say, "Am I going to write today?" And it's either a yes or a no. And if it's a no, I just get up. And if it's a
It
yes,
happens to all of us.
I
That's
just
my writing
start
part. I'm
typing.
like, type, type, type. No, come back tomorrow.
So, for the people that are, that are coming up, and I'm making you sound like an old man. You're not. You're still a young guy in the
I say I'm
business,
30.
and you're
I'm like,
coming up.
damn.
Yeah, I'm 54, so I got you a little bit. So the kids coming up behind you, and they're kind of watching what you do, and kind of noticing your path and how you're going. What advice can you give to people that are interested in doing, not copying Lyrizone, but doing their own thing, but they aspire to kind of walk in your shoes a little bit, walk in your footsteps? What's some advice you can give to those people?
Be patient. First freaking rule of the game. Be patient. Um, if you're trying to figure out your logo, if you're trying to figure out your name, trying to figure out your merchandise, try to figure out what you're gonna do with yourself. Be patient. Don't try to rush it all in one day. Now find some inspiration. Now wake up every morning trying to have a goal of what you're gonna do every day. Whether it be, hey, I'm gonna write something, I'm gonna write a free verse, I'm gonna make an idea up, I'm gonna do something to get my brain jogging in the right direction. But to never feel like if you do not make a right step, you're gonna fail 100%. Um, because with a lot of this stuff going forward with anything I do, especially with Lyrizone, it's always trial and error. There, you have to give yourself vulnerability and knowing that you're human, knowing that whatever happens, whether it be a bad day writing, you just don't have the right stuff. You're going to the studio, you can't hit the right note. You're having a off day and just feel like you just can't do anything. That's natural. It comes to every single artist. You just gotta come back tomorrow and ready to hit the ground running. Don't let it beat you down. Especially especially right now with the attention span to where you feel like you have to pump out content 24/7 to feel like you're active or you're making moves. No. Just as long as you're making steps in the right direction and doing what you want to do, everything else will fall to line and fall where it needs to go if you're just taking it and pacing it correctly. At least that's what I wish I listened to when I first started. When I first started, I was like, I gotta do this now, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Then you get burnt out because your brain is so ready to take on everything at once that when the slow events happen, which they will, you are going to crash severely because you haven't prepped yourself mentally of just taking a time and just prepping it. Now, I'm not saying there's times where I'm like, okay, I gotta jump on this right now or I'll lose momentum. No, definitely do it. But also realize you're human and things happen.
Yeah, that's some great advice. And you it's like you're saying. I think I'm trying to convey another way of saying it is, don't put too much on your plate, but keep something on your plate, right?
Right. Keep the plates going, but also know that hey, so finish one and then go to another. Because when I first started, I had 15 to 25 plates spinning in the kitchen, but not one dish going out. So that's the one thing you
Yeah,
have to always watch out for is that's why you want to make sure you can do things productively, but also not just say, okay, I got this going, I got that going. Okay, did you finish the last one? Oh, no, not yet. Then you need to work on that one. Then go on the next one.
right,
Then go on the next
right.
one. That's kind of like also going back to the prior question you asked as far as like the routine or how Lyrism does is like I've got myself now to where I have boards of production. What goes in this one? Release schedule. What goes on that one? Which will probably be easier if I had the boards right here so you could see it. Like I
Right,
said,
right,
new
right.
place. But essentially, it's all about having a method to your chaos and having knowledge of knowing what's the next step and executing from that way and not just hoping that it lands. Because I will say there is lucky cases, but they don't last very long because that's what comes with the business. Is why it's called the music business or entertainment business. Is that you have to follow up with what comes after the big buzz because if you don't, then it's done.
Uh, Yeah. Well, I just had a flash in my head. What was it? The Island Boys. Just the Island Boy.
Island Boys. Yeah, yeah. See, it's actually messed up
Oh
because they
my
were.
goodness.
Was it was something Logan Paul something. Oh my god, coming podcast, but they did multiple ones, and they were asked the same question as what was going to be after this, and they didn't really like ever like expand on all the jewelry being bought, like proper assets. That's like for a lot of stuff is that that's the main thing for every artist is having a return on investment and also having things pretty much locked and loaded and put things away for savings and prepare for the end game. Like impulsiveness is good, but also as far as artists itself, I know we all try to look good. we, like myself, I just bought a suit today for the wedding, so I already know you have to look good. But also at the same point too is that you have to make sure you're going accordingly to what you can do at the time and not burning yourself out because with the money game, especially for musicians coming up, money is very detrimental to how you move forward, whether it be marketing your new song. If you put thousands of dollars into your new song in production, but you have no marketing budget, the song's gonna flop, guaranteed.
Yeah.
If you don't
Right.
have money for merchandise so you can give to your shows or give to your audience, you're probably gonna have problems because walking billboards is everything. Like
Right.
I always say Slayer is one of my main bands as far as like idols, as far as merchants and marketing, because they always had huge designs. Like most of people who wear Slayer shirts, they just love the shirts, they love the music, but a lot of them are walking billboards. So yeah, that's the main thing. The Island Boys, oh my god. Uh yeah.
You
It goes
talking
back to
about
my
burning
point.
out?
That's what my main point about the like in like just attention like quick and then it burns out. It's gone.
Oh yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
"Okay, that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool for like 5 seconds, and then now what?" Like,
Yeah,
that's it.
it was cool to somebody, I guess. Somebody liked
Everybody
it.
has their thing. I mean, everybody might be like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
this
you're
Lyrizone
right.
guy's kinda lame." I was like, "Well, I can get lit. Like, put on some heart music. I'll start rapping for you. Let's get lit. Let's do it then. I'll tell
Nice.
you a story." They'll start having the screen rolling like, Star Wars, "Once upon a time, there was a guy with a
Yeah,
blue mask."
there you go. There you go. Well, another thing I wanted to talk about, especially before we get off the podcast, is 23 Knives tells such a great story.
Thank you.
And I know, you wrote that. And what gets me especially when I listen to and watch the lyrics on the video as it's coming by, I'm wondering in my head what kind of book or story collection Lyrizone could put together at some point in his life, because I think you have a talent for storytelling. Is that in any way, shape, or form something
It
you may
proved
want to look at in the future? I'm not talking about now because you got all this music stuff going
yeah.
on, but I see a
I
I
would
see a
like to
talent. I see a talent there.
I would love to. It's actually funny you say that because I've always wanted to do something in that form. Um, but like even with Quantum Realm and stuff like that, as far as like film slash movies like that, there's so much I can pull into when music is done as far as like the actual like I love sci-fi, I love time travel, I love fantasy. Um, that probably if I ever was looking at a second form of income, I might even start that relatively pretty shortly. Depends on how work goes. Um, but that's something I would love to do. But also, like, it goes back to music. I want to make sure 100% dedication, or
Oh, yeah,
just don't
yeah.
do it at all. Because that's the one thing I've learned throughout the years when I try doing like small projects is that if I don't fully dedicate myself to it, I get burnt out really fast of it because I don't make it a priority mentally.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's kind of where things like it's either 100% or nothing.
yeah.
So it could be possible. I was trying to do like a coloring book at one point for Lyrizone pieces, but it would be a little bit more PG. But that's where I was trying to also have kind of like a little thing to give back. But books are definitely something I would pretty much love to get into, but it will also figure out what creative direction I'm going into. Am I gonna have it about Lyrizone? Is it gonna be a time traveling piece? Is completely coexistent? Is it gonna be about the people he talked to that had some piece in the
Yeah,
history? It's a complete utter cluster of. It would be a
yeah, and
very
I
very
and I
fun thing, but yeah.
yeah, well, I'm very cognizant of the fact too that writing lyrics for a song is, 180 degrees different than writing a 70, 100,000 word book. Uh,
Oh, most definitely. Like you have to
yeah,
like. Oof. Like mine is
But
like mine is not mine might be in depth in certain ways, but you have to expand so much on one certain topic that I couldn't touch that just yet. Like I can do the
but
visual, but yeah.
yeah, but with that being said, the reason my author brain ticked on is as I'm listening and watching those lyrics roll by, I'm like, dude, if he put some framework around this, and hell, you could put 40,000 words into this and make a story out of it. I mean, it was cool. So
That was
anyway,
actually funny you say that. I was actually planning on because for Shosu Sagalia, the film series, my main idea was to do episodes based off each one. Oh, sorry. Looks
no,
like
okay,
computer's whacking out on me. Sorry about that.
that's
Um,
okay.
so yeah, Shosu Sagalia is supposed to be like short episodes based off every single song, and that also goes to having the right budget, having the right
Oh yeah,
actor, having the right people around. Um, for next one, I was still trying to do one for 23 Knives, but it was gonna be kind of like we're still going. I think we're called the Loner. It was gonna be kind of like Lyrizone being completely in like a dystopian future, and then finding like certain like figurines to like stuff in the stand and kind of like enter the Badlands a little bit, but be like the
yeah.
next timeline. Um, but that's stuff I would love to always do. Books, I couldn't touch that. Like I said, I couldn't touch that just yet because there's so much content and so much stuff you have to put into the actual book itself to keep that content going and have so many chapters of it. Like it would have to be a song with 15,000 sub pieces of it to even be considered. Um,
All right,
but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as that goes. No books just yet. Maybe next time.
no books, no books just yet. Okay, well, I'll keep it in short stories too. They count. I mean, if you ever get an idea and you want to jot a short story down, I know someone who markets those really well. Plug for Henrik Kuto. Thank you for reading my stuff on Weekly Spooky. Big shout out. Thank you, sir. Um, so before we do end the podcast, what I want to do is be quiet again. I'm trying to get as much Lyrizone in there as possible, but I want you to tell the audience. I'm going to put links below in the podcast everywhere we can find you. I know you have one central location,
Hell
and
yeah.
maybe recap what's coming up, what's coming down the pipeline, so folks can get excited about it.
Let's go. So first off, is you can find Lyrizone Lyrizone. You can find me in every single platform. I think the only one we haven't had just yet for just Lyrizone is Instagram, which I'm fighting for it right now. But gotta love meta and all that stuff. So everything else is Lyrizone. You can find lyrizone.com. That's the hub for everything: music, videos, content. There's a QR code where you have access to behind the scenes videos on the webpage. Um, there's merchandise at literally every single live gig I go to, whether it be beautiful skeleton shows. Shout out Tina Firefly, uh, amazing vocalist. When I'm usually there, I'm networking with everyone, whether it be the street team. If you haven't joined the Facebook Lyrizone street team and you like this conversation, you like me as an artist, feel free to send over a request. I'll get you in there. You'll get merchandise, the giveaways, talk about the songs. I'm setting up a Discord currently, but that's a complete other story. That's a lot of work. Just send the Discords up and get someone to run it. It's like, well, but yeah, so just Lyrizone for everything. Next song, like I said, we're looking at one for based off Cleopatra. I haven't figured out if we're calling it just Cleopatra yet. That would be too direct. But we're currently actually just recorded the chorus for it yesterday. And we're working on the verses right now and getting things locked and loaded. So expect the next song very shortly.
Cool, cool. Now, can they find your music on
Everywhere.
Spotify, Amazon?
Spotify,
They can.
Apple Music, Deezer, Title, like you will find me on every platform. I made sure of it. You
Awesome,
even find me on
awesome.
Audio Mac, even Audio Mac now, which I put it on there. So, um, yeah, you'll find me on every single platform. So, if you had any questions or anything, feel free. I'll be sharing this as soon as it comes out on all my socials. Feel free to interact with all the pages and just chop it up and say hi. Also, when you're seeing this video, make sure you give it a like because I'm gonna say it. You just like, subscribe to us, leave him a comment, tell him where you're from, and yeah, support this guy. He's amazing.
Oh man, I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anytime, bro.
Um, but yeah, Lyrizone is amazing. I can't get 23 Knives out of my brain. I know I've talked about it ad nauseum in this podcast, so don't be sick of me talking about it. Go listen to it.
Wait till the next one.
It's yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I like all your stuff, but when I heard that one, I was like, damn, dude, this is another level shit right here.
Oh yeah. Well, that's where I was like, okay, this is something we're doing. We're sticking into this thing because it's either 100% or nothing. We're just diving, never ending.
Yeah, yeah. So, audience, don't get me wrong. All of his stuff is good. It's just he hit me the right way with this one. So that's why I've talked about it so much.
Well, I appreciate you, dude. I've had some
uh,
folks that've been kind of like, oh, I don't like the harp that much, or it feels a little soft. I'm like, okay, well, when I wrote this, like me and Josh were talking, I was like, Peter, you're gonna love this, and they're like, this is a little odd, but I'm really enjoying this, or I'm like, I don't like this at all, and I'm like, that's completely fine, because
yeah, I'm in the first group.
that's an actual body of work. If you
Yeah.
either love it or you don't, like it's kind of the weird thing. Like I feel a little accomplished right now. I feel like I didn't write something that just like I knew it well. Made you feel like a little weird. I like it. I like the anxiety. I like it.
Yeah, man. I'm in that camp. I liked it a lot. All right, guys. Well, I am your small town horror author host, Charles Campbell. You can find me at Charles Campbell Author on Instagram. I've got a Horror 421, the podcast Facebook page. You can check that podcast out as well. Backstage 421, the podcast Facebook page. You can check that out as well. valleyboypublications.com. You can find all my social links there. And while you're there, buy a book. Help support an independent author. But have a new book coming out called The Piano Witch. I already showed the picture earlier, so make sure you check that out. Pre-orders are up now. It'll come out on Halloween. So that's
Oh
all I
yeah.
got for today, guys. So thank you, Lyrizone. I appreciate you coming on the
Thank you,
show.
sir.
And you guys have a great day, night, whatever time of the day it is for you. And we'll see you next time on Backstage 421, the Musicians Only podcast.
Let's go.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Backstage 421, the Musicians Only podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Listener support links can be found below. Thank you for your support.